Hello, my name is Charlie McGrath. I am the founder of WideAwakeNews.com, and I'm a host on the Rinse Radio Network. I'm also the co-founder of Doomcast. The United States is being used, the people of the United States are being used to foment hostility and can arguably be being caused to be responsible for the murder of thousands of innocent people around this world. There's a story that received a little bit of headline when we were trying to achieve some kind of CIA color revolution inside of Ukraine several months ago, but is most assuredly falling out of the establishment media because it's designed to fall out of the establishment media. Why? Well, because as former Ohio Congressman Dennis Kucinich laid out on an interview on the O'Reilly Factor with Bill O'Reilly, he told the people of this country that your tax dollars, 5 billion of them, was used by USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy, both quasi-government funded agencies, 60 plus programs, $5 billion, destabilize and tear down a democratically elected government in Ukraine. And before anybody sends me any kind of messages, I understand, the oligarch rule has been been the rule rather than the exception inside of Ukraine and all of Eastern Europe for that matter. I'm not saying that they were a clean system, but I am saying that it was a system that was Ukrainian, not American, not German, not Western European, not EU, not IMF, not the technocrats that wanted to get their hooks into there. So they did something about it. They went ahead and toppled that government. Months and months later, thousands and thousands of people dead. It isn't being talked about in the news one bit in our establishment media. Don't think for one second that the military and security industrial complex and their lapdogs in Washington, D.C. are not working behind the scenes to continue fomenting violence in Ukraine and establishing technocratic rule. And to that point, RT contacted me over this past weekend and asked me to talk about the leaked RAND Corporation memorandum. And it reads like a playbook for exactly what's happening inside of Ukraine today. I'm going to read as much of this to you as I can without burning up 30 minutes of your time. But it is worth noting that there is speculation on the authenticity of this. But let me read this to you. I personally believe there's about a 90% chance that this is genuine, that these are bullet points that was presented to somebody inside the Ukrainian government and also inside our government, knowing full well what's going on. A brief history on the RAND Corporation. This think tank is designed to war game situations and then feed that information and feed suggestions to the military of the United States, but also militaries around the world. Let's face it, our military works for corporate special interests. We work for the military security industrial complex as well as the financial industrial complex. This is their job. Destabilize and then set up governments that are going to be beneficial to the right corporations, our corporations. Memorandum on the advisable course of action in the case the peace plan fails. This is referring to Poroshenko's 1 week extended to 10-day peace plan in which, at the beginning of his announcement of a ceasefire, he had laid out the course, which is going to be, we are going to literally crush you at the end of this at the end of this ceasefire, talking to the pro-Russian separatists. The memo from the RAND Corporation allegedly goes like this. In case further negotiation with southeastern Ukraine insurgents should prove futile, the only practical solution should be a swift crackdown on the separatists and terrorists to be undertaken irrespective of the public opinion or operation of cost. Procrastination would dramatically reduce the operation's chance of success. Possible political and material downside of an operation should be greatly outweighed by the following probable gains. That one sentence right there, it should tell you how the military-industrial complex thinks, just like any other corporation. Profit and loss statements. Are we going to come out financially ahead? In this case, we're talking about individuals. Are we going to have more enemy killed than we're going to have our so-called legitimate government forces killed? It's nothing more than a balance sheet to the military-industrial complex. It goes on to say, the probable gains are activists of the pro-Russian political movement get disseminated. pro-Russian voters get disorganized. A significant share of the region's coal industry gets destroyed in the fighting or otherwise designated for a quick shutdown, thus relieving Ukraine's budget on the burdensome subsidy costs. Now, understand, this is a energy-rich portion of Ukraine. A lot of natural resources in the form of coal. It also has boatloads of pipelines running through this region of Ukraine, coming right out of Russia and heading right into Europe. However, a lot of the money that is spent by the Ukraine government is spent in a way that doesn't agree with the IMF's game plan. They don't want to subsidize the people of Ukraine. They don't want safety nets for the people of Ukraine. They want austerity for the people of Ukraine. They want to take the resources of the land and give it to a bunch of bankers. That's what the IMF does. Shutting down the Donbass industries will mean a stark reduction in the gas consumption and therefore lesser dependency on the Russian energy imports. Renat Akhmetov and his clan's political and economic clout will be considerably weakened. He is an oligarch, the richest man in Ukraine, who controls the coal industry in eastern Ukraine, and so happens to be anti-Kiev at this point in time. This is critical because what I'm about to say next, I'm going to say it has to do with Ukraine right now, but you could fill in the blank with America as soon as the world realizes that we are playing a Ponzi scheme with our debt and no longer respects the dollar as the world reserve currency. Ukraine's current economic and social difficulties can be explained to the public as an unwanted yet unavoidable consequence of the military operation which the Ukrainian government has been keen yet unable to avoid due to the terrorist insurgency. You see, you have a country of Ukraine that was poor before this began, that was ruled by corrupt oligarchs before this began. You have a nation where the people are suffering and have been suffering, but their suffering just got a whole lot worse, namely so that the Ukraine oligarch Western-backed government could receive money from the International Monetary Fund. There were strict limitations that came with this money. There were strict guidelines that Ukraine had to follow. One of them was busting any kind of a rebellion. This statement, although it speaks to the Ukraine, what happens in this country when we realize that our economic situation is completely out of control, or when China or Russia or some other powerful nation decides that they're going to overtly dump the U.S. dollar to create a panic, and we have an economic disaster in this country that we can't paper over with putting half the nation on food stamps or having record numbers of people on disability. What happens when we can no longer do that? We look like Ukraine almost overnight. So when the panic starts here, when the looting, when the rioting, when the civil unrest, when the totalitarian police state pushes back, and we have people dead in the streets because of the economic realization of our situation, who do they blame it on? They're going to blame it on the people. They're going to blame it on the people who are pissed off and pushing back. The economic condition we're in right now, although it can be directly linked to Wall Street and to corrupt politicians, it's not going to be blamed on them. They're not going to give up their power because the country is in turmoil. They're going to blame the people who are suffering the most, because the people suffering the most are going to be the first to take to the streets. The presumable stages of military operation. Stage 1, total isolation of the rebel region. Important. Considering any resident of Donetsk region or Lugansk region has had enough time and opportunity to leave the area of hostilities, provided they wanted to do so, anyone who has stayed behind should be regarded as complicit in the unrest or supportive of it. Important statement. Now, this isn't Pol Pot. This isn't Stalin writing this, right? This is the Rand Corporation. This is a United States company, a United States institution that war games for this United States military and apparently would be NATO military members as well. So considering anybody that's in this region that is still there, and Donetsk is 1 million people strong. There's 1 million people living in that city. The Lugansk region has about 300,000 people living in it. Now imagine, if you will, Ukraine, which is dirt poor and has been for a long time, and you have the eastern part of Ukraine that their standard of living makes the darkest parts of Detroit look like they're living high on the hog. So how is a million people going to be leave the area because there's bombs going off? They're not. They're going to be just like the people in Fallujah in 2004. They're going to hunker down. They're going to get in their basements. They're going to try to avoid being killed by Kiev airstrikes and Kiev artillery strikes and Kiev soldiers and Kiev tanks who are following Iran Corporation plan on how to eliminate any kind of insurgency or any kind of a rebellion. They're not going to be able to afford to flee Ukraine or even flee their region. But the Rand Corporation seems to suggest anybody that stays is a terrorist. I continue. Martial law will be introduced in the different regions. All local authorities will have their competences terminated. The Constitution shall be suspended. Direct presidential rule shall be imposed. The region shall be encircled with troops and sealed off entirely from any flow of goods and persons, both incoming and outgoing. Special attention will be given to areas that border Russia. Broadcasting services, internet connection, telephone, mobile communications in the region shall be shut down. A curfew imposed of 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. International media staff working in the region shall be subject to special procedures. Look, this is exactly what is happening in eastern Ukraine right now. You're not going to hear about it on CNN or Fox or any other alphabet networks. You're not going to hear about this from the establishment media because they have a vested interest in keeping the military and security industrial complex and the financial industrial complex rolling right along. Because if they don't make their billions and billions of dollars. But I'll finish with this, and I'll attach this memorandum so you can read the rest of it. It only gets worse from here. The people of Ukraine who do decide or have the wherewithal to flee, they're going to be checked. They're going to be checked for bruises. They're going to be checked for gunshot wounds or shrapnel wounds. They're going to be checked for gun oil on their person or on their clothing. And if it's found, they're going to be tried as separatists or as terrorists. And if they are tried as separatists or terrorists by a kangaroo court and found guilty of supporting the terrorist faction, they're going to lose everything that they have. The state is going to take this property. The state is going to take this region, and it is going to make the life of the people who remain an absolute living hell so they can get in there and secure the rich energy resources of eastern Ukraine. Finally, ask yourself this question. How does a Ukrainian military that couldn't fight its way literally out of a wet paper bag, they couldn't get anything right against this band of separatists. They were losing helicopters. They were losing fighter planes. They were losing giant cargo planes. They were losing territory by the tens of miles every single day. Suddenly, they decide they're going to declare a ceasefire and then sign a deal with the International Monetary Fund and EU 7 days later. And suddenly, they're tactical geniuses. They're encircling this region. They're cutting off. They're shutting down communications. They're brutalizing the people of eastern Ukraine. They're rolling in airstrikes. They're rolling in artillery strikes. They're putting the infantry on the ground. They're putting the armor on the ground. And they're doing exactly the game plan of this supposed Rand Corporation leaked memorandum. Nothing is as what it seems. And in the case of the violence that's going on in Ukraine, you're not even seeing it because our establishment media wants you distracted. They want you looking at the World Cup. They want you to look at the border, although an important topic, the border between Mexico and the United States. They want you to look at core red team, blue team issues. So you will ignore what is happening around this planet in our name. Stories are attached. That's all I got.